Behind every bit of mom wisdom is a story of a real mom and real kids just trying to love each other well. Whether you're cozied up on the couch with a mug of coffee, pulling out of car line and heading to work, or out for a walk, you're welcome to join us as we share stories and laugh, learn, and grow together. It's the iMOM Podcast. Welcome to the iMOM Podcast. I'm Abby, joined by Megan and Susan and Chloe. And this week we're talking to the moms with strong-willed children. I was talking with somebody a while ago about, just parenting in general. And she said, some people have kids that are very compliant. Some people have kids that are very strong-willed. And I said, I got two pretty compliant children. And
I don't want to talk to you.
Well, and that's the thing is I don't know. I have so much respect because my sister has a very strong-willed child. And I look at her, I'm like, I don't know what I would do.
Is she strong-willed?
It's not in the way that, no, I mean, we were both really good kids, so I don't know what she did to deserve this
you
sweet boy.
Somebody at the lunch table. How are you not strong-willed?
It's suppressed anger, Susan. It was suppressed anger. So somebody that does have a strong-willed child is one of our iMOM writers. Her name is Cindy. In one of her articles, she told a story about her daughter who was very headstrong. And this is kind of a different way that a strong will comes out. And she gave this example from when her daughter was 8 years old. She said her daughter kept asking for a specific toy, and Cindy kept saying, no, it's too expensive. And this battle went on for a long time. Instead of letting it go, her daughter decided to take matters into her own hands. And Cindy said that she found her daughter and two friends in the front yard with some of her toys on a big blanket and this very crudely written sign that said toys for sale. Mm-hmm. And Cindy asked her daughter, why are you selling your toys? And her daughter said, well, to make money to get the toy that you told me we couldn't afford. And she said people driving by thought it was cute and they gave her money and she was able to buy the toy.
Smart girl.
Yeah, right? And Cindy's point was sometimes a strong will comes out as a child who stomps their feet. Other times it comes out as innovative, right? And she's probably dealt with both with her child. But sometimes it's not cute. Sometimes it is frustrating. I'm sure a lot of the times it's frustrating. And so I want to talk today about parenting a child who is strong-willed and really what that requires a mom to do because I think it's just as much about the mom's personality as it is about the child's, like what kind of mom you have to be to manage a child who is strong-willed. So, Susan, I know that on Facebook you mentioned, under this post, you mentioned that you had 3 that were and 2 that were not.
Yes.
So can you name names?
You know what? I would say none of
No, thank you, Abby.
You are not the strong-willed one. No way.
But I would not say I would say you're compliant, but you have a strong will too. I wouldn't say any of my kids are compliant. And I think here's the thing. A lot of times the strong will comes from passion and conviction. And those are really good things. Now, when they're young, their conviction isn't always correct. So you got to channel that. Mm-hmm. And their passion isn't always doable. So again, you have to give them a way to okay, I see this is what you want, like in her case. So let's figure out a way for you to get that. How can you work towards it? So they have an outlet for whatever they're feeling so strongly. I think, if it's strong will that's tending towards defiance, well, that's a different thing.
Yeah.
But to me, the toughest thing for a mom is you have to be prepared to go the distance. Mm. You cannot let them win. And not in a bad way. I'm not saying, like I said, you try to work it out for them so they can achieve what they want to. But on the other hand, if the child is super persistent or defiant, you cannot get worn down. You have to consistently redirect.
Yeah.
And that's what takes a lot of patience and it takes a lot of parenting time. Mm-hmm. It's not something you could just nip in the bud right away because a strong-willed child will keep coming back. Yeah. And you have to be that firm boundary constantly. Yeah.
Chloe, were you a strong-willed child or at any stage, like as a kid or as a teen?
I really wanted to make my parents happy. I didn't do a ton of rebellious things, and when I did, I regretted it instantly.
It's interesting. The mom who's listening who does have a strong-willed child, is she wondering, does he not want to make me happy? There's got to be more to it than that. There's other things that are feeding that push.
Yeah, I see it more as passion than not wanting to make somebody happy or a strong conviction. They just think whatever they need, want, or want to do is right. I have to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had another comment on that Facebook post, and someone said that all kids are born strong-willed, and it's up to the parent to train the child on how to handle their strong opinions and behaviors.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think some kids are just more easygoing than others. You know, like I think that some...
Well, we all have a will. I mean, that's clear.
Right.
How strong are you going to act on your will? I do think kids go through little seasons where they test. And if a child is really totally compliant all the time, I'd have to question, well, come on, you have some opinions, you have some desires. They have to come out. You have to learn to express that too. That's the kind of child you want to encourage them to be a little bit more, have a little bit more will, or they're going to probably just float through life without any direction.
Yeah.
I had a friend in college that went through a phase where she literally just bucked the rules to push back. Like every single rule she just questioned and like asked why and why and why. And I think it was more of just kind of like a rebellious, I'm not going to listen to any sort of authority phase, which was kind of interesting for me to watch because there was definitely some things that I questioned, but like I wasn't going to go all out against every single authority figure because I understood some of the rules and why they were there. But I did question some of them. But because that authority had given her some rules that she didn't trust and that I kind of agreed with, I didn't really trust either. It made her not trust them at all, which was kind of interesting to watch because then everything that they said or implemented, she was like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this.
I love so much what you're saying, Susan, because I think it's important to identify the heart behind the strong will and opinions. Because, I mean, whether it's you're strongly opinionated about following the rules or strongly opinionated about questioning the rules, you're motivated to push for something.
Yeah. But isn't there another kind of strong-willed child who doesn't just have ideas? Is there a strong-willed child who just likes to push back? And
He's just ornery.
Yeah.
We had a babysitter. She said, he's just an ornery thing.
Oh, yeah. What about the kid who like looks at their parents in the eyes and disobeys?
Well, there's all kinds of personalities. You know, let's go back to Winnie the Pooh. You know, there's Eeyores and there's all kinds of there's all kinds of personalities. So some kids, you take that very passionate but also very negative, and you marry that together. And yes, you could have somebody who's just being purposefully rebellious. They're I just want to stand up. I just want to assert myself. But again, can we get behind the mind of that child too? What's motivating this? Is this your position in the family? Is this something that's going on at school where you feel like you're always having to shut your own opinions down? Usually, even the most ordinary child, you can find ways to open it up to do different things. It's tricky. It's tricky because sometimes they're just grumpy. Yeah. You just never know. Sometimes, oh my gosh, especially those girls, you know, you hit them at 12, 13 and the hormones are going and you could have some really strong wills for no apparent rational reason.
Right. I've seen a strong will come out. You know, I said both of my boys they obey pretty quickly. And I want to think that there's something I've done to help cause that, but I do also think that's just part of their personalities.
Yeah.
I really do think that. But I know in my older son, I see a strong will in that he is more likely to talk back because kind of what you said, Susan, about having ideas. One day I told him something like, turn off your tablet or turn off the TV or whatever it was. You have 2 minutes until it's time's up. And I told him to turn it off and he didn't do it. And so then there was some consequence of, you know, you don't have it for the next day or whatever it was. And whatever was going on leading up to that point, he found a way to kind of like logic his way through it. And he said to me, and I said, you know what? I hear what you're saying. And I think you've made a good point. And he's like, well, if you could do it over again, would you rethink the punishment? And I said, I might, but I'm not going to because this is, you know, it was like one of those, he's trying to lawyer me. Yeah. And I'm like, dude,
talented.
You are 11, you know? And so I'm trying to find that balance between helping grow that thought process in him and the logic and the, you know, finding his voice, the balance between that but I'm still mom. And so, you know, talking back is not good. And there comes a point where you just have to say, yes, ma'am, and move on your way. So let's talk, you kind of hinted on a little bit, Susan, but let's talk about the qualities that a mom of a strong-willed child needs. Because I'm sure somebody who's listening is like, okay, yes, I have this kid, and yes, he has these ideas, and yes, he's all these wonderful things, but how do I deal with him? What can I do?
Yeah, this is so funny because I have found that the earlier and the younger you start to address it, the better. So, for example, if you have the little girl who has the red sparkly shoes and you're going to the zoo and I've told this story before. This is one of my girls, wants to wear the Dorothy shoes from Halloween. And you know they're not going to last in the zoo. You need to wear tennis shoes, but they are pitching a fit because they want to wear those shoes so bad. You have a choice. You can gamble and say, okay, wear those shoes. You get blisters, you're walking. Or you can not let it happen. You're not going to the zoo then. It's tennis shoes because we're going to be walking all day and you have to think of the family. We're not carrying you. That would be, bad for the whole family. Same thing like with the sweater. They don't want to put their sweater on. It's freezing cold outside. Okay, you can run the risk and make them cold all day and make them pay. Or it's you've got to think of whatever it's going to be. Do you have to win? Can you ensure that whatever your test is, it's going to prove to them that they were wrong? Because they have to move from trusting themselves to trusting you. That's why kids will up. We'll say it instead of lawyering up, they will up, is because they think they know what's better than what you know. So you have to create situations where they're going to have natural consequences, or you have to assert yourself and win because you know what's best.
How do you orchestrate those situations, though, where there's natural consequences?
It's really, like in the case of the jacket being really cold, I would let them be cold one day.
Yeah.
Now, some kids really don't care. So let's take one of my adopted son from Russia. Couldn't do that with him because that kid could survive in below zero.
I've done Siberia.
Yeah, exactly.
I can do South Tampa.
So where I really learned the most about strong-willed kids was when I adopted because they were 9 and 13 and they had lived in the wilderness of Siberia. And there was really no natural consequence I could bring about that they could not handle.
Yeah.
It was a battle of wills. So it was really running the endurance. But I can't remember your original question there. I hope I answered it.
Well, it sounds to me like to be a mom of a strong-willed child takes a lot more intentional and active parenting.
Yes.
You have to have a stronger will than they do. You have to ignore your own tiredness because sometimes they're just trying to wear you down and we're tired a lot. You have to rise to the challenge of whatever they're throwing at you that day.
I will say this, because I've made this mistake. If you cave, so one of my kids is just not strong-willed in a way that seems rebellious or is like angry. It's just persistence. Megan will know which one I'm talking about. He will ask me for the same thing 5,000 times. He just never lets it go. It's just this constant drip. And there have been times with everything going on that I just kind of caved. I just finally caved. And what that does is for that strong-willed child who's rolling the dice that you might change your mind, it just reaffirms in their head, keep rolling the dice.
Yeah.
I can do it. You're gonna hit that time.
My dad is very persistent. My dad is he will make things happen. If something needs to happen and he gets it in his head that it's going to happen, he will make it happen. I have never seen someone wear down my dad the way my brother can. It is
just so now you're letting the person out.
It is amazing. I'm like, wow, I've never seen anyone wear down dad the way you can. Like he just will keep going. I'm like.
We have an article about the qualities of a strong mom or a mom needs to parent a strong-willed child. And one of them is that you have to follow through with discipline, like you said, Susan. And she quoted a medical professional who said, if you chronically give in to a strong-willed child or spoil your child by always caving into their requests, you're creating an individual who won't know how to cope with adult life. And I think that speaks to the big picture, which is that a parent of a strong-willed child has to play the long game and has to see the big picture. Yes. You know, it's all about like today is going to be hard, but if you stick with this discipline, if you stick to your guns, you're going to see the fruits in 10 years, in 15 years. And
when they're little, sometimes you think, oh, it's cute or they're in a mood or whatever like that. You're pass it off a little easier, but you're really feeding the beast. Address it when they're little, because when they get older, it's just even harder.
Yeah.
They can get around you easier. They've learned to kind of, not trust you.
Yeah.
In other words, like, she really doesn't know what she wants me to do because she changes her mind.
Right.
Or if I get away with it, she doesn't do anything.
Right.
So you kind of have to lay that groundwork when they're little.
Yeah.
Well, and I've seen too, then it spirals out, because then it's not just a problem like with my oldest, him being strong-willed towards me, but then it goes to teachers and other parents and other authority figures, and then it's an even bigger problem.
Yeah. Or when they become teenagers and then you are relating to a strong will in a very different way,
Yes.
I think. Chloe, you have, did you say off air that you have nieces or nephews that are
I
a
do.
little bit more
Yeah.
strong-willed?
My brother and his wife are both the firstborn, and they joked even with their first, when she was a baby, she's 6 now. They were like, "Oh gosh, like she's a firstborn, just like we're a firstborn. Like they're all really strong-willed." And then they had 2 more kids, and they're both really strong-willed too. And they just talk about how exhausting it is, and I guess like just talking to them. Because their kids are such great kids. They just are strong. And as their aunt, I'm like, well, that's a great quality. I love that. But I'm not their parent at the end of the day. So just like, what encouragement can you guys give to a parent who's in the trenches of raising a strong-willed kid? How do you not lose your head and lose control of your emotions during it all?
That deep breaths, I think.
Yeah.
I like to look at it as a challenge. They're usually, I found, they end up being really smart because
Yeah.
they figure things out. When they really want something, they push really hard to figure stuff out. If you can get it channeled, there's probably always going to be a couple seasons where they AWOL. Just know that. You can't overreact. You can't, especially when they're teens, they're going to go through different things because they are more opinionated.
Yeah.
They just know what they want, and until they're proven wrong, they're going to go after it. So I think
One thing you told me, Susan, because I was getting really frustrated when he would just continuously, I'd say, "Don't touch that," and he would literally just put his hand on it and look me dead in the eye, and I was like, "Are you kidding me right now?" Like, and so one of the things that Susan told me, which I now think about a lot, is don't react, because he's trying to get a rise out of you. Like, if he's looking at you dead in the eye and doing something that you told him repeatedly not to do, he's just trying to get a rise out of you. So I have to very calmly, not let it bother me, and B, just say, "Okay, it's time, up in your room," and just calmly walk him up there, even if he kicks and screams, and then have a conversation with him about it afterwards. But it was really hard for me to not get super frustrated and angry at him and let him see that.
Yeah. I think that, I don't know if I would say this to the child, but as a mom, I would say, I would actually maybe pray, "Lord, show me how this is going to become a great character trait later. Like, how is what I'm seeing right now going to transform into something great in 20 years? Because you don't want to make the child, you don't want to be like, "Someday I'm going to see why all this was worth it," because that makes them feel like, totally crummy at the time.
I learned this from one of my kids. When we adopted our older kids, we went through a lot of counseling, of course. They taught me this great trick. They said, this is, don't look at this child as an extension of yourself, because that it makes you more mad. You take it personally, and you tend to get more emotional. She said, this is a little person that's like becoming a little thing, growing up. Pour yourself, what do you like, Diet Coke, tea, whatever it is.
Wine.
Sit down.
They pour myself a Diet Coke.
Exactly. Think about it. Look at them. Watch them. And think about, well, how is this going to work out? And that throws the child off when you don't react. It throws the child off when you're just kind of looking at them going, I don't know how that's gonna work. But you know what? I see you.
Yeah.
I see what you're doing. And then you take time later and do something, or I've talked about this before, whatever it is they're rebelling about, you literally just remove it.
Yeah.
You are the parent. I think we forget these electric things, you can unplug them.
Yeah.
These games that they play or whatever, you can discontinue. The TV, cut it off. I mean, we have so much more control as parents than we think we have. We just can't see that we are in control.
Yeah. More practical tips, though, that you asked for, Chloe. The story that Cindy told about her daughter selling the toys in the front yard, she went on to talk about how to channel that character trait into something good. And some of the steps, if you do have a child that pushes back, explain why the rule is in place. Give them like fun projects and puzzles that require thinking outside the box. Exercise that interest and that skill in them in a healthy way. Recognize when what they're doing is belligerence or when it's disobedience versus frustration. And I think that the more you observe your child and, that gives you the chance to respond instead of react when you're seeing that happen. I think those are all good little bits of advice for how to grow that good character trait in them.
Yeah, I do think that's a good thing to remember is find ways for your children to have success. That kind of rechannels them to positive things instead of, them focusing on what they're not supposed to be doing.
I have a funny little side story. So the other day, James, so he's 3, he's trying to get himself dressed, and I usually help him, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to come help you get dressed, yada, yada. And he got so angry. He's like, no, I want to do it by myself. And I'm like, bud, I help you get dressed literally every single morning. You're 3. And he's like, no, I have to do it by myself. And I'm like thinking in my head, like, why do you have to do it by yourself? And then I let him kind of do it by himself and try to struggle and get his long sleeve shirt on. And of course he like gets his arm in the neck hole and is like, pulling at it and stretching it out. And then he gets even more mad because he can't get it on. And I'm like, okay, we got to go to school. And then it popped into my head. I realized his teachers, they're trying to teach these 3-year-olds independence. And so they're having them practice, like put on their clothes and put on their jackets and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, that is why he was being so adamant about doing it himself and strong-willed about it, was because at school, they're trying to teach him that. And that was kind of a little bit more comforting to me, that he wasn't just being strong-willed for the sake of it. They were coaching him at school to do it. And so there might be some sort of backstory to the strong-willedness, whatever you'd call it.
There's overachiever. That's the strong-willed overachiever. He
There's usually a why behind it. There's a why. So ask yourself why. It might not always be apparent, but you can at least start to think about it, observe them.
Right. Well, and he is a people pleaser. And so I did feel bad because I was like, okay, he's just trying to learn, like his teachers are telling him to, which I was like, okay, that's sweet. I'm sorry. I didn't.
Yeah. Another good trick that I've heard, but when it comes to like having a resistant child who doesn't like to hear no, nobody likes to hear no. So try to respond if they ask something that your answer is going to be in the negative. Try the phrase yes, but. So for example, you go out to dinner with your kids and you have ice cream at home and you have, something at home that is a good dessert, but they say, can I have dessert? Instead of saying, no, we have dessert at home, say, yes, but we're going to eat it at home. It's a special cookies and cream ice cream I have. So Lee, when you say no, a lot of times they're not going to hear anything after the word no. Meanwhile, when you respond with a yes, they have less of an urge to push back. And so even though you're not giving them what they want at the moment, they are a little bit more apt to listen. So for example, your child wants to play with the iPad. Instead of saying, no, not until you get your homework done, you could say, yes, but your homework needs to get done first. So just using language that is less
abrasive.
Yeah, less abrasive, less triggering to that child that naturally wants to push back, I think is a good tip as well. All right, so tell us how you deal with your strong-willed child, what it's like to be in the trenches, and how you get through it every day. You can email us, the link in the bottom of the show notes, and definitely subscribe to the iMOM Minute. We're always sending out great articles and cute printables that will help you with whatever stage of parenting you're in. And thanks for listening. Thanks for listening to the iMOM podcast. iMOM is the motherhood program of the nonprofit organization Family First. Along with our fatherhood program, All Pro Dad, we exist to help you love your family well. Subscribe to our daily email, the iMOM Minute, by going to imom.com/subscribe and get tons of great ideas, insight, and inspiration. The iMOM podcast is hosted by me, Abby Watts, along with Susan Merrill, Megan Tigner, and Chloe Blumenthal.